What's going on, Auburn fans? Welcome to Auburn Tigers Recruiting on AL.com. That's our nom de plume. This is our recruiting writer, Nick Alvarez. I'm Patrick Greenfield, and we're here to talk a little about the Auburn defensive back class for 2023. So, anything you want to update us real fast on Auburn recruiting? Obviously, a big weekend for them. Obviously, 5 big weekends in a row. Having those 5 straight home games. Now they'll be traveling over to Sanford Stadium in Athens. What can you tell us about the class so far?
Yeah, I mean, so the class so far, it's technically net positive 2 players since the season
Yeah,
started by losing
right.
one in game 3. I think Auburn has done, as good enough a job as you would want in terms of getting kids on campus throughout this
Yep.
time, making good impressions, even though some of the results haven't been there on the field. I think getting a chance to kind of go around and maybe some Friday nights in some of these other states might help if Auburn
Yep.
coaches you can have that opening. When Terrence Love committed, we'll talk about him a little bit more in a bit, but when he committed, Auburn's recruiting officials were kind of tweeting out stuff about the Peach State pipeline, about Georgia, and kind of how there's kind of a room for Auburn to kind of thrive and get products that Auburn or Alabama or Georgia are kind of missing on because they can only take so many kids too.
Absolutely.
So I think going to Stanford this weekend and getting a chance to play in Athens and be in front of some of those crowds and that audience could help. The same way we were talking about it with Alabama and Texas earlier this year. And I'm going to keep on saying it. They just need to start adding bodies, numbers,
Yeah.
and positions. You could say, lean one way or the other. Offensively, it's a quarterback, I think, and he's dedicated a lot of time to that. Defensively, you probably just want a linebacker, maybe, or one of those. But you need things everywhere at this point. The need is just the absence of players in general.
Absolutely.
But you're also really high on the 10 players they do have, and like we've broken them down. They have upside. They do kind of fit what Auburn's looking for. And we'll get into some of these defensive backs that also.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing that you do want, you always are going to want, is defensive back. So we'll get into the first one. That's going to be Terrence Love, 4-star from Fairburn, Georgia. That's just a suburb of Atlanta. He's number 24 ranked safety. And, one thing about all these defensive backs, we're looking at 2 for 2023, and then we're also going to look at 2024 Amon Lane from Moody, is that, they can get local. And they got a lot of people who have a lot of love for Auburn, want to play there. This is one of them. What can you tell us about Terrence?
Yeah, I mean, Terrence Love, 6'3", 195 pounds as a safety. Like you like that, right? Like that sounds right. He 6 career interceptions. He has 21 tackles, 1 deflection. He actually plays from the same school as 2024 Auburn quarterback commit Aaron Noland. So there's obviously a little bit of a bond there, which has helped with Auburn coaches. Like JC Hart, he is Zach Etheridge commit. Which is we talked about Auburn's great assistant coach recruiting. And as a ball player, I mean, Terrence Love can play a little bit of center field. You could see him maybe walking down a little bit just because you think his body would be able to hold a little bit more size and weight once he gets into a college system. He's a pretty top of the line player in terms of the versatility.
He's a two-way player too. I know he plays wide receiver. Is there any potential that he switches? I mean, obviously, you can have a big body like that at safety. I mean, that's what you want. You want Ed Reed out there patrolling the field. But could we see him get some catches if that route opens up to him?
I think more likely you'd maybe see what Bama's doing with Kool-Aid McKinstry. It's throw him back there on punt return if he has good hands and if he can make people miss. Let him work that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's stay with a local, the local commit, JC Hart. Say what you want about 3-star. I like his size, 6'2", and being recruited by Zach Etheridge is another thing. This is a local guy from Auburn. I'm gonna be real. I can't say that.
Lochapoka.
All right.
Yeah.
Lochapoka.
Yeah. So you're gonna have me be here. He plays for Nostaluga.
Come on, somebody out there. Call us out.
I don't know. We're getting. Yeah, I know.
You lived around there as well.
A little bit, yeah, when I was down in Montgomery. But as a football player, what I can say about him at 6'2", 175, very rangy cornerback. I think you kind of like watching him use his speed in the slot. He's athletic enough where he can kind of disrupt people on the outside too. I think at the next level, he's probably going to be more of a slot guy, or he's not going to be necessarily manned up against the other team's gigantic receiver. I think he's a good tackler. But you don't see a lot coming out. And he's a product of Auburn recruiting local and getting in with some Alabama coaches, which has been a question mark of Bryan Harsin overall.
Yeah, and so here's kind of one of the bigger points I want to make on this show. Both recruited by Zach Etheridge. And we're going to see what Amon Lane had to say in a second with I don't commit to the school, our coach committed to the school. Zach Etheridge being talked about in those situations as possibly being a head coach one day, possibly being the head coach at Auburn if you're really going to get into it. So how big a deal is, Etheridge on this program right now, especially going out to get players? Most, that's a third of the class at the moment.
Yeah, almost. That's a good point. And I think and Auburn coaches in general, I think they're just really able to connect with the kid, where it does kind of create some question marks when you see the comment, I didn't commit to the coach, like Peter Woods, who's at Clemson, who's committed to Clemson at Thompson High. He said that Nick Eason was kind of a really big part of his recruitment at Auburn. And then that recruitment carried over to Clemson once he jumped there. So I think when you're looking at these recruits having these relationships with coaches, it's important to have a little bit more than that, or have a little bit of a larger vision, because, if one of these coaches goes away, all right, that recruit now may have another connection somewhere else. We saw that with Eric Wolford and a bunch of guys with Alabama's offensive line group coming in this year. So in terms of Amon Lane's comments, in terms of Bryan Harsin, it does get a little interesting when you're kind of talking about, where a head coach goes. Or how does that affect the rest of the class? Amon Lane from Moody transferred from Thompson.
Another in that region, obviously just outside of Birmingham, another in this, region for grab for Auburn, 2024.
Yeah. And it's obviously easier for him to say, I didn't commit to the coach, I committed to the school, because, he is a year plus out before he even has to really, really sign anything or get down to the nitty-gritty of his decision. Where I think for some of these other kids, if you're like a Jeremiah Cobb, or you're one of these offensive talents, or you're in a place, you're at a position like a running back, or maybe like a quarterback, where it's really system dependent on how you're used. When you say, I didn't commit to the coach, I commit to the school, that's a harder sell. But as part of the other, dozens of other things recruits have to take into account, their degree, location to family, that's when you really are committing to school. That's when you really are if you don't have that pro football future, then it's really going to matter what school you went to, regardless of your head coaches at the time.
There's also I think a lot of people maybe they don't think about recruiting, but it's wins are wins. Yeah, everybody wants to win, but for the development of a football player, and if you're connecting with that coach, take the running back position at Auburn, and then obviously people probably want to see Tank explode a little bit more. They love working with Cadillac.
Yeah.
And it's not really, I can't speak for them. I'm not going to speak for any player, but maybe it's not about winning. It's about that development and your professional, development as well. So that could be something that is in play. Talking about one more cornerback, can Auburn flip 5-star cornerback Tony Mitchell? I'll read it like a headline right there.
Yeah.
From Alabama. This is 5-star from Thompson. He was committed to Alabama just a few months ago. Tell us what you know about this situation.
Yeah, so we just got done talking about the Alabama-Texas A&M game this week and how that's some intrigue, because Tony Mitchell has been down to College Station a bit. Texas A&M were actually viewed as the leaders at one point, but since he committed to Alabama, he's really been in contact with two schools since then, Texas A&M and Auburn, which I think is really interesting. We've talked on one of our first episodes about Jaleel Hurley taking a couple of visits to Auburn, and that getting people a little freaked out a little bit. But what it says is that Auburn is still doing the job of getting these guys on campus. They're still having enough of a relationship to get them to hear them out.
Absolutely.
Because, all these player situations are very fluid until that December signing day, which always gets closer, it feels like. And what's going to happen is some of these guys are going to look at the board. They're going to look at their recruits coming into the class. They're going to look at teams with the transfer portal. And that's, all that's going to be talked at. Smack is going to be talked between each coaching staff.
Absolutely.
In terms of oh, you'll never play there. Oh, you're never going to compete there for a championship. So Auburn has a shot. If I had to kind of rank them, I would probably do 1, Alabama holds on to them.
Sure.
Kind of close behind. Texas A&M flips them. And then a sizable way down, Auburn flips them, just because we got done talking about the coach, not the school. If you're a 5-star talent, do you want to be a part of a rebuild, which it seems like Auburn's heading to?
Absolutely.
So like there's a lot of layers to it. But to Auburn's credit, like they are in the mix right now for him.
And I just wanted to throw out, this is the national rankings for Auburn, 54th right now, below Vanderbilt, below Georgia Tech, below SMU, above Wisconsin. So that's a plus right there. But like you said, they need to get some bodies.
Yeah.
And hopefully that'll happen. And, the Georgia game is going to be a big one just to get, eyes on the field. And I think we're all interested week in and week out if the Auburn team can kind of like overcome the just a one or two hurdles and get into the football game a little bit more, especially in the second half, especially in those second and third quarters. And that seems to be, what's kind of lacking right now.
And like it should be noted, it doesn't need to be wins. Right?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Like it doesn't. James Smith, I think, was at the Penn State game, and then I think he was back in town last weekend, if I'm remembering correctly. And like he had said, they cleaned some stuff up. Like they showed a little bit more fight. Obviously every kid's gonna want to go in there, and some of them will want to like save the program themselves. But a lot of them just probably want to make sure that it's functioning to a certain extent.
This is interesting. The SEC standings, Texas A&M only at 8. I mean, really, Ole Miss at 9. Which is pretty interesting right there. So
can we go back? Can we go back to the team rankings real quick? I was just kind of looking at it. I noticed something.
Yeah.
How many of those schools have fired their head coach? Wisconsin did.
Georgia Tech did. Yeah, NC State's the top 15 team.
Just to show the other right of it too. Like it's really interesting to see where kind of Auburn's competing with this.
The one behind your head is Oregon State. That's my wife's school, so they're not, and they're actually pretty good too. Hey, Auburn, I will always give Auburn credit. You go to Jordan-Hare for a game. It's an amazing place. The players feel that. All the basketball players are standing there. It's a great vibe, even with the current situation, and it has to matter for a recruit. Hey, one more shout out. That's how you say it. Loa Chapoca. All right.
Thank you, Benton.
All right, I got to get down there. I got to get back to Lake Martin. Hey, I just want to say thank you. Everybody, enjoy the Auburn Georgia game. Little pause right there. This is Patrick Greenfield, Nick Alvarez, AL.com. Thank you to our sponsor, Inline Lighting. If you guys anything you want to say, throw it in the comments. No way Auburn will get a player from Thompson. Those places are play. I don't understand really what that means, kind of, but you never know. You look at Robert Woodyard. He was a Bama commit for a long time last year, and he flipped on National Signing Day.
Also, this is going to be a really annoying technicality, so don't hate me, Tim. But Amon Lane was at Thompson last year, so they already have a Thompson kid.
Boom. We appreciate everybody watching. Auburn Tigers Recruiting on AL.com, sponsored by Inline Lighting. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the Auburn Georgia